I'm
What's
still
going on,
hardwired.
everybody? We are back. We got episode number 48 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we got a nice little card here. We got a fun main event. I don't think it lasts very long personally, but we got Dominic the Devastator Reyes coming off consecutive defeats for the title, taking on everybody's favorite meme, Jerry Prochazka. It's going to be a fun one. We're all excited for it. I actually think the card is pretty fun. Not a lot of names.
Nah.
I don't have a ton of bets, but the ones I do have, I'm pretty confident in. So, yeah, I'm excited to get into it. But first, as always, we're brought to you guys by betonline.ag. They are the best book out there for props. They had one FC up tonight. They got LFA coming up. We got PFL. We got PFL props, and we got props for this weekend. And they're the first book with props again. For a 50% bonus up to $1,000 on your first deposit, use a promo code CLUBSUB. Again, that is betonline.ag. And, guys, if you like the show, I say it every week, and I'm just going to keep saying it for the rest of the time we do this. But please, drop a like, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. We'll throw more bonuses your way, more winnable games, but nobody else does, that you can win week to week if you subscribe and get us there. Get us to 500 by July. That would be perfect. But anyway, yeah, so we're going to get into it, guys. As usual, you got me, you got John Stargarian at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. C is not with us tonight, but hopefully we'll be back with us next week. We will see. But anyway, we're going to get into it. First fight of the night. We got my boy, Cool Hand Luke Sanders, taking on Felipe Kolaris. Luke Sanders and I have had somewhat of a star-crossed relationship. I have always been a believer. I was just telling these guys before we went live, I hear people all the time say Luke Sanders is the worst bantamweight in the UFC. And whenever I hear that, I'm always just like, really? Like, when you watch the guy fight, he's a great athlete. He hits hard. He's a good grappler. He's a good striker. Luke Sanders is, on paper, a good fighter. The problem is, unfortunately, even though it is fighting in a cage, it still requires brain cells to do the right things. And the number of those that we have, that Luke has, we're not really sure. But I've always been a fan. I went heavy on him last fight against Nate Maness. And here he is tonight, or this weekend, fighting Felipe Kolaris, who, by the way, I actually do think might be the worst bantamweight in the UFC. I guess Kolaris is a decent submission grappler, but I don't think he does anything well. His striking is not good. I don't think his wrestling's particularly good. And I saw someone this week talk about how he took Montel Jackson down a couple times, but it's like, dude, anybody that forces him to the fence and shoots a double takes Montel Jackson down. Like that, the guy just doesn't really know how to get a wide base. And so it's like, I look at the fight and I'm like, Sanders should really do whatever he wants to Kolaris. The only way I could see Sanders really losing this fight is if, he does something like engage in the grappling on his own terms. And unfortunately, I think that's very live. I'm in this weird place where it's like there's a part of my brain that's like, I think Sanders should be minus 250, minus 300. And a part that's like, fuck, man, if I don't blast Sanders at minus 140, I'm a complete idiot. And so I have no bet here. The line's coming in. I have major concerns about his IQ. I was huge on him against Munhoz, and had he kept his head, on a swivel in that fight, he wins it pretty easily, as we saw for the first 7 minutes there. But yeah, ultimately, I don't trust him. But if it does come in below minus 125, I'm very confident he's more than 55% here. So Sanders is my pick. You have the obvious concerns with Luke Sanders, but yeah, Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. I don't like, have a no bet list per se, but I think Luke Sanders is one of those guys that's kind of on it. For me, there's just been so many fights where he's actually looked, pretty good in, like he was beating the living hell out of Yuri Alcantara in that fight, gets knee barred. Even against Barao, obviously he won that one competitive rounds, but still kind of, an over the hill Barao. The Patrick Williams fight, I think, is an interesting one for me. Obviously he won that via unanimous decision, but Patrick Williams, pretty much death gas, already mid fight. And then Patrick Williams, caught a second wind. And in my opinion, Luke Sanders dropped the third round there. Once again, he still won the fight. But there's a couple other fights to even touch on that, we don't have to run through, but I just have always had, problems with Luke Sanders there. You touched on it even against Maness. Clearly, was the pre-fight side there was winning that fight, gets clipped, goes down, and it is what it is. So it's hard for me to have any supreme confidence in backing a guy in Luke Sanders at this point. I do think he to your point, John, I think he probably has like minus 300 upside. He really, really does. But I think you just need to mind your P's and Q's when backing these type of guys. And what I will say, at least in some sort of credit to Kolaris, the guy's tough as nails. He's not, an easy guy to put out. So Sanders has obviously historically had some finishing upside, hits pretty hard, decent boxer, pressure. But I guess if you're on the Sanders side and you're banking him to finish Kolaris, I'd say pump the brakes a little bit there. With that being said, and me not thinking that Sanders finishes Kolaris, that also leaves me with, a potential 15-minute affair, which gives more room for error for Luke Sanders to do dumb shit at the same time too. So I think it's kind of I don't want to say like a high variance type of fight, because like I said, I do think Sanders is the better fighter here, the better minute winner. But just dicey backing a guy in Luke Sanders. So I'm picking Luke Sanders, but I don't really want my money anywhere near him at this point.
Yeah, and real quick, guys, if you guys are watching one, I know I do expect we'll outdraw one tonight, but if you are watching one FC while you're watching us, please let us know if Eddie Alvarez wins or loses. That's the only fight I care about. I don't need updates on the rest of it, but give me a heads up. Anyway, Lags, what do you got here? Luke Sanders, Kolaris.
Yes, I mean, you talked about with the IQ. So the thing on top of that, too, is I think he's pretty hittable on the feet, too. But that's the thing. I don't think Kolaris really has any power to disrupt his game. So I think this is probably, like you said, I think this is a good spot for Luke. I don't see Kolaris really winning this fight other than like maybe I could grind heavy decision or maybe finding a sub, but I don't really see that too likely. I like Luke here. I'm just not paying the juice for him, obviously.
That's like every Luke Sanders fight, right? It's like
I know.
Luke Sanders has every tool he needs to win this fight. Will he use them? It's funny because, like, I bet Barao against him when they fought a couple fights ago, and I was like, God, Barao is still skilled for 6 minutes. Luke Sanders is going to do something dumb, and of course, that's the fight where he's like, oh, I'm just going to stand bang with the old wash veteran that can't take a punch anymore. It's like he couldn't have gone for a takedown there and initiated it. But anyway, we move on. We got a fight that I kind of think could be fun or could be over very quick. We got KB Bueller taking on Andreas Michailidis. Andreas Michailidis, last time we saw him, was KO'd by the cage door, much to my chagrin. Luke, you want to take this away?
Yeah, I kind of felt bad for you on that one, John. I know you had a pretty strong opinion on him there, but honestly, I kind of think it's the same song and dance for Mr. Michailidis, at least not from the recent fight, but from what he has done historically. I think he knocks Mr. Bueller out. But at the same time, it's not like a super bullish, confident take, because I think the tape on Bueller is a little bit limited. The one time he dies to, Tom Breeze. That's not a bad loss in any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. I think the grappling, is interesting here. If Bueller is able to land takedowns, I think he is the better submission grappler. But once again, limited footage. It seems like Michailidis is largely pretty anti-wrestle. So I think his advantages come on the feet. Bueller stands, pretty tall. I don't think he's very fast. I don't think he possesses much footwork. So I think it's a good spot for Michailidis, but I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say, throw him in your parlays and whatnot. I think it's a better fight to target props. I think it was actually really interesting too. Bet Online, they opened hashtag we love the book, but they opened I think they opened this at like 2.5 or something like that, and they quickly corrected that to 1.5. So I have some personal shares on the under 2.5 here at minus 170. I think both guys have finishing upside in whichever way they're able to implement their game plan. But I'm more so on the side that Michailidis knocks him out. So yeah, that's my take.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, kind of similar thoughts with Luke as well. I was leaning towards the Michailidis side as well. I kind of think quick finish is likely here, under 2.5, minus 180. I was looking at that as well, but kind of want finishing upside for both guys. I don't think Bueller's really UFC caliber, to be honest. So I don't really trust his finishing upside.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like Michailidis is one of those guys that, like, in theory, I like his game a lot. He actually has some grappling credentials. He's a decent wrestler. On paper, he's a decent submission grappler. He keeps high output. He hits hard. He's got low kicks. Maybe not the most technical boxer in the world, but he seems to make up for speed and athleticism. And like, he's fought, a pretty decent level of competition prior to the UFC. And if you go to the Prochazka fight, he looked great for about 4 minutes there. And then looked like he started to visibly slow there. And like, that's kind of my concern with him. Cause that's kind of the MO here. You watch every fight Michailidis is in, and he basically throws the kitchen sink at you. And if he doesn't get you out of there, it's basically, can I steal a round off you in the last 2 rounds, and can I hold on for dear life? Like I said, I think he's very skilled. And Bueller, on the other hand, my gut is he's horrible, but just from what we've seen. But like, we haven't really seen that much. Like, we talked about it the last time he was booked with Brees. We're like, we don't really know what KB Bueller is. I largely feel the same way. It's like, we'll talk about it sometimes, but and I think we all agree, the first round of an MMA fight, especially in your debut, but it takes some time to start making reads, and some guys just kind of get going slow. That's just how they are. Now, is Bueller that guy? I don't really know, but like, we didn't see that fight play out long enough, I feel like, to make any kind of accurate read off of it. And so for all I know, like, I'm pretty confident he can't just do what he wants grappling to Michailidis, but for all I know, Bueller could actually be a decent striker. Now, you put a gun to my head, I'm guessing the line is right, and Michailidis is going to do whatever he wants here, likely finish early and cruise. But I do think there's enough unknowns where it's like, I'm not really eager to have much Michailidis exposure myself. But yeah, it's a fun fight, I think, and some questions should be answered. Unless Michailidis KOs him in 30 seconds, then the only question that'll be answered is whether or not Bueller belongs in the UFC. But, anyway, we move on. We got,
another fun fight.
Oh, I'm going to start with you here. I forgot you have a bet here, Lags. We got Loma
Yes, I do.
taking on, we'll call her the Bane of the Club and Sub podcast. We got Sam Hughes.
Yeah.
What do you got here, Lags?
Yeah, so I guess to start off this breakdown, I would say I'm not betting this solely because of all of us obviously losing on the over 1.5. We obviously bet Tisha and Sam Hughes over 1.5 minus 115, and kind of blew up in our face right in between 2 rounds. Doctor's cut stoppage is what it is. But on this fight, obviously, I think Loma, similar to Tisha, has her covered pretty much everywhere. The striking at space, the striking in the clinch. I think just the variety of strikes in general. I think she could also find her way to a cut stoppage here. I have 3 units on Loma at minus 260. I think the line now is probably too wide. Like, I obviously wouldn't parlay here at minus 360, minus 400, but I wouldn't chase a Loma decision prop here, I think.
Yeah, funny thing about that Sam Hughes Torres fight, I watched that card with like 4 of my buddies, of which one is a big MMA fan, the other 3 aren't. And like, before, we knew we were watching a day or 2 in advance when that line popped up, and I was like, guys, this is like a 95% outcome. Like, put as much money as you're comfortable losing on this bet. It is going to hit easily. And because like most of them aren't huge MMA fans, I felt uncomfortable for the rest of the night. I was there after I lost a large sum of money on it myself. Fuck Sam Hughes for that. It's been a cut on your nose and you're pretending you can't see. Like, give me a break. But all of that being said, I will stop the Sam Hughes slander for a second. Lags, I mostly agree with everything you said, to be honest. And I don't even mind the number. My concern with Loma is the same concern that I've always had with Loma, and then until they make a 105 division that I'm always going to have with Loma, it's the size. I actually think her grappling's gotten a bit better as she's gone, but I still don't think it's the best. And so it's like, look, I'm inclined to think on the feet Loma's going to have her way with Sam Hughes, to be honest. But that said, I will give some credit to the fact that, like, Tisha Torres is legit top 5 to 8 girl at 115. And so it's like, I think Loma's striking's legit, but like, I wouldn't put it really on Torres level. And so I think Hughes could maybe be a bit more competitive. It's just like kind of playing devil's advocate here. Yeah. And I think, the size thing, Hughes is a big girl for the division. Maybe she could have some grappling success. I'm really playing devil's advocate here. I missed the number, minus 260. But I'm just saying, like, there are like things that I'm always going to be worried about with Loma, and the size is one of them. But in terms of skills, she should wash Hughes, really. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there as well. The one thing I will say about Sam Hughes is I think she's a pretty tough girl in general, and that's the large reason I went so heavy on that over 1.5. Not that I had supreme confidence in her in general. I just thought she might be able to last. But in this spot, I think Loma is going to be able to, pretty much have her way with her. Legs touched on it, clinch, range, striking exchanges. But you touched on it too, John. The grappling for her is still somewhat of a question. If Hughes comes out here, attempts takedowns, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable having, minus 400 and Loma in your parlays at the end of the day. It is a pitter-patter WMMA fight. People talk about, maybe the Loma finish. But I will say she beat the absolute shit out of Jinyu Frey for 15 minutes. And, maybe that's just chalked up to Frey also being tough, but she landed a ridiculous amount of power in shots for the division in that
Luke, you're cutting out a bit.
And wasn't able to put Frey out. I'm more so on the side of a Loma decision here.
Yeah, agree with you. And honestly, hopefully they do make the women's 105 division eventually, because honestly, it's a far more compelling division.
Yeah,
than
it seems like they're cutting the
140.
145. It seems like they're cutting soon. So,
I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? We have Carla. I mean, Carla could fight at 105. Tisha Torres would fight at 105. Brianna Van Buren would fight there. There's a lot of girls who are talented in the UFC who would be 105-pound fighters if they made the division tomorrow. Like, it's a better division than 135 right off the bat.
Hannah Cyphers.
There it is. Hannah Cyphers. I'd support it. I like the shockwave. We move on, though. Luke, I'm going to start with you here. We got Kai Kamaka III taking on our boy downtown TJ Brown. What do you think?
Yeah, so it seems like TJ Brown's kind of like a popular dog play this week, and I understand it to some perspective given the Kai Kamaka Jonathan Pierce fight. Got taken down, looked like a fish out of water on his back. TJ Brown does usually proactively wrestle. I believe is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu as well. So I think that's definitely a path for him here, but at least on the feet in that space, I think actually Kai Kamaka is kind of live for a knockout, to be honest. I know he's been a decision machine historically, but TJ Brown's pretty hittable outside the fact like he's been KO'd and dinged a few times. I think Kai's live for a finish. I think the under 2.5 is kind of the play here.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Luke here too. I haven't played anything either, but yeah, I kind of think just on the feet, Kai has slight striking advantages, and the grappling is somewhat of a wash. I would say while they're about even gas, I think while they're fresh, I think TJ Brown probably has a significant advantage. It's just kind of like, again, if he proactively wrestles or not. So if he does, I think the under 2.5 is probably a good look. Again, this could look like a sweaty bet for the end. I think Kamaka could eventually get top time here. But again, I think cardio is a huge question mark for both guys. So pass for everything for me.
Yeah, I kind of hear you on that. And it was kind of something, when the odds came out that, I eyeballed, we talked about it. I was like, TJ Brown as a dog seems like an interesting play. But look, even if you assume he wrestles, I actually don't think – I worry about Kamaka's get-ups because he does have that bad tendency to give his back. But I actually don't think Kamaka's a bad grappler. I think the Pierce fight – as much of the Pierce fight was Kamaka getting out grappled as it was him gassing. Like, if you look at the early portions of that fight, he really didn't have much of a problem working back up to his feet. And, he slowed down against Tony Kelly. And so it's like, I think Brown can have success with the grappling all fight. Do I think he can do what he did to Jordan Griffin? No. And I also don't think Brown has the best positional control in the world. And so it's like kind of to Luke's point. I think Kamaka, if he wants it, is going to get plenty of time standing early in this fight. Brown, we've seen his durability is quite questionable. And I don't even know if it's a durability thing so much as when Brown's standing in space, his chin's right out in the air and his head's right on the center line there to be hit. It's just a reality. And so it's like, I kind of like Luke's under 2.5. I don't have a play here because I do think Brown has, the favorite path to victory, but I don't trust his control game. I don't trust his gas tank, to your point, Lags. And it's like, I know Kamaka has no KOs, and for me, that's always a huge red flag, having no regional KOs. But, I've seen Brown hurt too many times here. And so it's just like, I don't know. I don't think Brown's a trustworthy enough. There are guys even though he lost Jordan Griffin, who I would play Brown against. But I kind of like Kamaka. I know everybody's sour on him after Pierce, and we're going to get to Jonathan Pierce in a second. But, I kind of like Kamaka's game. And so it's like, I don't know. I kind of think the line's correct, to be honest. It's a low degree of confidence. But, yeah, my pick's going to be Kamaka by KO.
And real quick, too, John, I know I was breaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
Apologies, guys. Hopefully, it's a little bit better now. But
way better
now.
I do think an important note for Kamaka when he did fight Pierce in that last fight. Dude's a Hawaiian guy. Was kind of over there doing his thing. In that middle, the middle of his camp, he was essentially making a transition to the United States, moving over. He's up at Extreme Couture now. He's been training with guys, the Mads Burnells, the Dan Iges, the Jeremy Kennedys, Patchy Mixes. So a ton of guys at 145 are all, in my opinion, all elite level grapplers. So once again, complete narrative, not saying take overt weight into it, but now the guy's, not training, out of a garage with his cousin, essentially, he's at a real camp training with real guys. So I wouldn't put too much overt stock into Pierce. Once again, you got to focus on what you see. But the guy is at a real camp, and I think he has at least bodies to make improvements here within the next 4 months. Once again, not banking on it. I think it's just important to note.
Well, and also for what it's worth, I'd argue while Brown has a okay wrestling game, maybe even a plus wrestling game, he's more reliant on athleticism than anything else. Whereas I actually think Kamaka is a very good athlete himself, and his game's a little bit more refined. So yeah, I give some credence to that. But we move on. Speaking of JSP, Jonathan Pierce, we got Jonathan Pierce taking on Gabriel Mowgli Benitez. And this is a fun one, and it's one I don't have a bet on at the moment, but if the line continues to creep toward Pierce or towards Benitez, toward Pierce, I'm thinking of playing Benitez. I guess it's just I think the common narrative I've seen here is Benitez has been taken down a bunch. Pierce lands takedowns. Therefore, Pierce should be valued against the guy that gets taken down. And I guess what I'd say to that is look, I kind of get it. And Pierce theoretically, I kind of like because look, Pierce is going to spam volume like crazy and attempt a lot of takedowns. As a minute winner, he's great. I even said on the show, I thought he was probably valued against Kamaka. He does a lot of his actions per second are quite high. The problem is I don't actually think he's a great striker, even though he throws a lot. And I don't think he's a great wrestler. I think he's more reliant on his huge frame to get takedowns than anything else. And look, I know Mowgli got taken down a lot by Collard early in his UFC days and a lot by Barzola, who takes everybody down. But I've seen people talk about Jason Knight and being oh, Knight looked bad against Mowgli. And it's Knight looked bad against Mowgli because Mowgli's really good. It's not and I don't think Pierce is a much better wrestler than Jason Knight is, I guess is my point. And so it's I don't think the takedowns are liable to come easy, for one. For two, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be able to control Benitez. And on the feet, Benitez is one of the hardest guys to hit in the UFC, and Jonathan Pierce is not hard at all to hit. I think, Benitez is going to pretty much toy with him on the feet. I'm very live for a knockout. We saw Joe Lauzon hurt him. And look, so yeah, Benitez is my pick. I'm moderately interested in a bet if it gets below minus 185. Like I said, I like Pierce theoretically, but Benitez is one of those guys. He's in that borderline 15 to 25 range at 145. He's someone, if you ever put it all together, who could definitely be ranked there. I just don't see, at least at this juncture in his career, Pierce being at that level. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you as well. I think Mowgli's kind of a sneaky, interesting guy. Just in general, you talked about the takedown defense in terms of percentage. It's not great, but if you really watch him, he's never been overtly controlled on the ground. His get-up game is elite, is probably about as good as it is. So once again, everything needs to be put into context there. So with that being said, and, Pierce being, coming from a wrestling background, I believe is a jiu-jitsu purple belt. I don't really think he has much of a path on the ground, which largely leaves this fight standing to me. To your point, John, he does come forward spam stuff. So from a sneaky, I guess, angle, and, assuming Mowgli doesn't put him out, I wouldn't be surprised, if Pierce was able to squeak something on optics because Mowgli does play the back foot. But I do think Mowgli is the much better striker. I think he's faster, better defensively, as you touched on, who also I think is live for a KO. That's just the problem I've had with Mowgli is more so of the optics. Even if you look at the Morales fight, had a very competitive fight with Morales. You arguably could have actually scored that for Mowgli, in my opinion, too. But Morales was the guy going forward. not making the direct comparison between Morales and Pierce by any means, but I'm just saying if he doesn't put him out, he's not like crazy high output. Like he's more your technical, solid, straight punches. I wouldn't be surprised if it played closer than odds indicate. But to your point, Sean, I think if it dips a little bit, I do think it's somewhat of a levels fight in some capacity. So I'd be fine with laying the wood on Benitez, but those optics scare me just a tad.
Yeah, for sure. Lags, what do you think here?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys here, laying chalk on Benitez, over 200. But I think JSP is super hittable on the feet, not a great striker. I think when we talked about this, it was funny. Like the over was sitting at 1.5, and we were like, well, over 1.5, it probably goes over, right? It's like, I don't know. It's probably could be a war on the feet if it stays standing. So I don't know. I think this fight's a pass.
Yeah, fair. So we move on, and let me tell you, if you're into busty redheads, this fight's the fight for you. We got my girl, randamarcos, taking on Luisa Pinero, making her UFC debut. And, I know if you guys have been watching this pod week to week, you're going to be like, oh, God, John's going to lose money on randamarcos again. It's just a hobby I have. And you're right, except I don't think I'm going to lose money this time. I backed Marcos for 2 units here. I played her once at 161. I thought it might get wider because people would be kind of enamored with that Pinero KO, but it's been closing. So I took her again at plus 150. To be honest, it's like, look, I get Pinero. She looks athletic. She had that KO on Contenders. And, let me be clear here. I know we've been fading a lot of Contenders fighters lately. It's not just the blanket fade on Contenders. With Pinero, it's like she fought a nobody on Contenders. You look at her regional record, she fought nobody. And if you actually look at the tape of her regional scene, this is a girl who was getting her back taken by girls that were 0-0, 0-1, 1-1. She's extremely low volume. She was losing minutes to, girls with virtually no experience not very long ago. And so now she comes in off, it was a spectacular KO on Contender Series, no question. But she takes on randamarcos. And it's like, look, I get Marcos is coming in off a 3-fight losing streak. She's 35. She's 10-10. But, look at the girls that Marcos just lost to. Amanda Ribas, Mackenzie Dern, who is now top 5. Kanako Murata, who I think is probably going to be top 15 in the UFC. I mean, just a great game. She's fighting. Marcos' issue has always been more athleticism based than anything else, and she's been fighting at a level that she just can't really compete with. And she's been doing her best, but she can't. Now she's taken a big step down in competition here. She's fighting a girl in Pinero who, like I said, has been fighting girls with no experience, who's quite hittable if you close the distance against her on the feet. Like I said, very low volume. Pinero, it's funny because I think, the kind of general perception of her as a striker because of Contenders, but she seems to be a girl who's much more comfortable engaging in the grappling. And, what I've seen there hasn't been pretty. She looks to get these fights to the mat via those head and arm throws. And against someone like Randa who, knows her jiu-jitsu, it's a recipe for getting your back taken. And it's like we've seen Randa win fights with, Carla Esparza, much better grapplers than Luisa Pinero. Frankly, I just think Randa style's always going to lend itself to close fights. It's just the way it is. She's not the most high volume ever either. She's not a physical specimen athletically, but it's just I've seen Randa go in there and beat much better competition than Luisa Pinero. Not that she's faced, just that her in general. I have to favor her here. I'm keeping the bet small just because it's randamarcos. She doesn't have the best fight IQ and she doesn't really, outpace people on minutes very well, but I think she's the clear side. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, I respect the Marcos play. I really, really do. I'm picking her. I think she's the side if you are to bet this fight. But man, I'm just very salty on oh geez, Magic. What Luke looks sad, must be ruined. But Magic, you're an absolute savage. You don't know what you're looking at in terms of females, bro.
Team Jojua.
Yeah, hashtag Team Jojua. I'm a girl. Hashtag Magic. Don't go to Vegas. You're gonna be walking down the strip. The whole Bellagio. The light show. Jojua gonna come up to you, flying armbar. We never see Magic again. So let's pump the brakes there, Magic. No, in terms of the fight though, I should be betting Marcos. Out of principle and out of what I've seen, I should be betting randamarcos here. Pinero on paper is good, judo black belt, jiu-jitsu brown belt. But what we have seen from her in the grappling, as you touched on, John, it's not great. She's more of your traditional rock'em sock'em robot kind of girl. She's deaded a couple of regional girls, massive step up in competition. But I still can't get over randamarcos going into the guard of Mackenzie Dern. When she said I wasn't going to go into the guard of Mackenzie Dern pre-fight on an interview with James Lynch, she said she was going to do that. Then she goes, fights Claudia Gadelha. What is Claudia Gadelha consistently struggle with? Pressure. What does she do? She stands behind the black line, gets picked apart for 3 rounds and doesn't do anything. Was there for that live, almost just left the building after that. So there's just... yes, the strength of competition is massive. She's beaten the better girls. Yes, but I'm just done investing in stupid fighters with bad fight IQ. I'm just done. I'm just done with it personally. Maybe she comes out here and rolls, which she probably should. But I'm just done with it, and I'm saving my shillings. So, but best of luck, John.
Wags, up to you.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. You guys were on the markers, but we were talking about this before the pod, John. What's tough for me is optically, the fight I think is going to play close. You touched on it. How do I see Randa winning the fight? And it's optically, to a decision, I think it could play out way close enough for me to be you know what? Did I justify enough on this bet? Am I that confident if it's going to be that close? So that's just my take. I know. Sorry, ran on your parade a little bit, John, but we're rooting for you. We're rooting for you. We're rooting for you.
You guys are going to be filled with a sea of regret when Randa chokes her out on Saturday.
And then Randamarcos fights another job the next week, and then she goes complete lobotomy again, and you lose what you just lost or won on fucking Pinero.
You're right. There are some fighters I'm a sucker for losing money on, whether they're good fighters who I want to fade or bad fighters who I insist on betting, which is why I haven't decided if I'm betting Luke Sanders or not yet.
But in all seriousness, no, I really hope Randa comes out here and does what she should. She should beat this girl. She really should.
Yeah, I completely agree. We move on. We got another low-level shit fest here. Fun times. Luke, I know you got some stuff to say about it. I think I'm going to agree with you. We got Poliana Battaglio taking on Luana Carolina. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a very, very difficult fight to cap for a multitude of reasons. Obviously, Battaglio, she's got the big body kick, finisher. In her losses, she hasn't looked good, but those losses have came to very good girls, Jillian Robertson, Cynthia Calvillo, obviously, plus grapplers in that capacity, can't take anything away from her. But, even in her wins, I don't think she's looked great outside of those early finishes. You go to the Lauren Mueller fight, she clearly slowed down in that fight, dropped the 3rd round when Mueller just pretty much came forward, and I value Lauren Mueller very, very lowly. Personally, I don't think that girl is a UFC caliber fighter. Pretty much took a clear round off her. If she just went aggro, early, honestly, Battaglio might have lost. But with Carolina, she is hittable. I don't think she possesses much grappling at all. And so despite the grappling actually being, the quote-unquote Jekyll and Hyde scenario for Battaglio historically, I think she actually has a very clear path on the ground and in the wrestling if she decides to take it. Carolina will be aggressive in attacking stuff, but her acumen there is pretty bad. She'll throw stuff up. I think Battaglio could just... The scenario I see if she takes it, she'll throw something up. Battaglio just walks to the side on a triangle, passes, gets into side control, probably mounts in there. If that's, the quote-unquote case that happens. But the issue I have, once again, I think, the fight could be very competitive on the feet if Battaglio doesn't, hit that body kicker, doesn't dead her or something, because at the end of the day, Carolina, you can say what you want, low level, but it's, low to moderate level WMMA. She comes forward, she spams volume, over 6 strikes landed per minute. Her optics are good. She is hittable. But what I will say, even against when she fought, what's her name? Zombie girl.
Cachoeira,
Cachoeira chucks heat, man. She hit her clean a ton in that fight, and the girl didn't really move, at all. And she kept coming forward, kept throwing more, and she won the fight. So I guess the narrative of, I've heard some, sneaky angles, under 2.5 here. I don't necessarily know about that. I think Carolina might be able to take the heat. I'm still picking Botelho, but I'm not going to lie. It looks like this line is continuing to increase on Botelho. And if it gets to like plus 230 for Carolina, I'm probably going to take the shot just based off of principle. I think there's enough red flags on Botelho personally to say that she's probably not 75% in this fight. So once again, low fight. I actually bet Carolina against Lipsky. Did not look good hindsight, knee bar. But what I will say, similar scenario, if she doesn't get, in that funky transition knee bar, those two girls have a pitter patter fight, still kind of fine with that too. So we'll see. I'm picking Botelho, like I said, but if it gets too crazy, I'm 100% fine to back the slop fest at plus 230.
Lags, what do you got?
What I will say first is crazy. How is this fight opening the main card? This is the first fight on the main card. I mean, we literally could have put Benitez and Pierce as the first fight on the main card, and people would be like, "Oh, wow, what a great fight!" Now we have this. Yeah, I'm kind of in the. I think Botelho probably deads Carolina early on the feet. I think she has the best striking defense, but that's just my take. Nothing crazy. Obviously, I wouldn't chuck Botelho in a parlay. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, Luke, I think you hit a lot of it on the head, to be honest. I think our boy C is actually on Botelho here, but I think you nailed a lot of the fight.
He's on the under.
Is he on the under? Yeah. So it's like, I think Botelho has a reasonably strong chance to finish Carolina early. Like, she does throw heat, and, she is reasonably technical. At the same time, it's like, first of all, you guys remember when Poliana Botelho was even money against Cynthia Calvillo? That was fun. I actually backed Lauren Mueller against her, and then like an idiot, I backed her against Jillian Robertson. And it's like, I can't – what I didn't think about the Robertson fight? And it's like, in taping this, it's like I can't get out of my head. Pearl Gonzalez was able to clinch her up for about 9 minutes that fight. Now, Pearl Gonzalez, super hot, decent grappler, in terms of jiu-jitsu, but Pearl Gonzalez is not a great MMA fighter. And yet Pearl Gonzalez closed distance against her with really no problem at all that fight. Jillian managed to close distance against her fairly easily. Lauren Mueller closed distance against her. On top of that, we have Botelho, who doesn't have great cardio. We've now seen that demonstrated multiple times. Man, it's like if you told me Botelho was going to come out and just grapple aggressively, I'd feel a lot more confident because I think, that is probably the best path, although I don't know if she has the gas tank for it. But she's probably going to strike. And, if she's striking, the chance to finish Carolina is going to be there. But like you said, Luke, Carolina seems pretty durable. And if you actually look at their metrics, her output's significantly higher than Botelho's is. She's going to come forward and she's going to throw, and she's going to force the kind of pace that, unlike Mueller did, like you said, if she doesn't get her out of there early, I think you're going to be sweating your ass off with a Botelho minus 200 ticket, to be honest with you. I really, really do. It's kind of the epitome of a fight that could be ripe for a live bet where you get Carolina at like plus 400 or something after a round where she's getting lit up. But I think she's going to be able to close distance. And I haven't really – look, there aren't many fighters in WMMA who can fight well off her back foot. But Botelho seems exceptionally poor at it. If you're not giving her kicking range, I'm not sure she has the best hands ever. And if Carolina pushes her into the pocket, I don't know, man. I think it's a pretty tight fight. I don't know that I want to bet Luana Carolina, but I'm kind of with you, Luke. We started in that plus 235, plus 250 range. I might not have a choice when it comes to it because it's like I can't cap a Botelho. Just being honest, I know she finished Shiori Kondo, but I can't cap a Botelho finish better than like 20%. Can you? Can you really it's like the more I think about it in my head, the more I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I should be betting Carolina here. I don't want to do it, but I do think she's the side in terms of a money line, to be honest. So no bet as of yet, but I'm kind of in the same place as you. We move on. We got the machine, our boy Merab Dvalishvili coming back, taking on Cody Stamann. Really fun fight. It's kind of a nice test for Merab. Lags, what do you think here?
Yeah, so I touched on it in my prop article this week, and I think obviously the popular play this week I think is just Merab by decision. Obviously that's how his fights usually end up going, but I kind of think that this fight just plays out longer on the feet at space than normal. Like we touched on this, before the pod, obviously. I think this fight plays out a little bit similar to that Dodson fight in the sense that if Merab isn't getting takedowns, I think he could still get the control time against the cage. But I think this fight could play out distance a lot more. So when FanDuel opens the props up, I'm going to be parlaying the fight goes the distance at minus 280. I think that line has a ton of value personally, because I think that's only around like 80%, and I think I would cap this fight going the distance. That is around like, I forget what that was, to be honest with you. Oh, sorry, minus 280, and then so it would be like 10% edge. I think personally, if it would be like minus 400, I think should be accurate for going the distance. So
yeah, fair. So like, I mean, the normal play to make in this kind of spot is Merab decision. And the reason I haven't made it is because just like, I actually do think Merab hits pretty hard. And I do think Stamann could maybe early in this fight, keep it a distance a little longer than normal. Do I think Merab's going to knock him out? No, but I think it's more live than it is in most fights. I don't have a bet on it. I kind of do want to play Merab. And if we get some late Stamann money, and I think we will, I probably will. To be honest, I think he's going to fuck Stamann up. Like it's hard for me to watch the guys who've gotten really physical with Cody and think he's going to hold up against Merab. There are guys who I think give Merab real problems. Guys like Rivera, Munhoz, guys who can stuff who I know can not just stuff the takedowns, but also kind of separate. I haven't seen a lot from Stamann to tell me that he's going to be able to do that for more than 5 to 7 minutes. I just think it's a matter of, we know Merab's going to bring the better pace. We know Merab. I mean, I know he's going to hit takedowns here. Like that's the thing. Like I know it's going to happen. Like I could, Rivera went 2 for 3 against him. Outside of the Caraway fight, a totally washed Brian Caraway, Cody Stamann actually hasn't really displayed the best takedown defense ever, to be completely honest. So yeah, I mean, Stamann's got virtually no power himself, and Merab seems pretty durable. It's extremely hard for me to imagine a scenario where Stamann wins minutes here. Like, I think he's pretty finish reliant. Maybe I'm underestimating the grappling with him, but I really don't think so. Like, I think Merab's one of the 2 or 3 best grapplers in the division. And he's got a pace that just basically no one can match. So I think Merab's going to beat him. I think he should be close to, that 75% mark here. If I get under minus 230, I'm going to probably jump in. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, maybe it's one of those spots that looks just so obvious that it turns out to be a trap in some capacity, where Merab knocks him out or, Stamann edges something potentially. But I guess I'm with the consensus. I think Merab decision is the play. We kind of touched on it in the group chat, John, and in terms of the stats, 51% of the time, the guy's fights is spent in control of that 51% of the time. Merab is in control 93% of the time. Yeah. And despite me actually really valuing the wrestling game of Cody Stamann, I do think Merab is a notch better in that capacity, and I don't see, Stamann really being able to create space when that, scenario is initiated. I think Merab's going to be able to play the blanket game on him, at space. Let's say it's a 15-minute kickboxing match. Is Merab, minus 300 in that scenario? No. But at the end of the day, Merab is a guy who sticks to his base. He's going to go to it. I'm not saying there isn't going to be any range striking exchanges here. There will, for sure. But I think he's going to stick to what he does well. And you touched on it too, John. It's not like it's the first time that we've seen, Cody Stamann struggle in the wrestling. Brian Caraway, got him down and held him down for about 3 minutes. I'm not saying Merab is going to hold him down here for extended minutes necessarily, but I think it's going to be more of like a Covington, takedown, mat return type scenario, blanket pressure. If he doesn't get it, pop up, strikes, back down, shoot down. I think the pace and pressure of Merab is going to be too much. But with that being said, it's one of those spots where I'd classify, I'd rather buy down and play the most likely outcome. That then playing his money line personally. Hey, who knows? Maybe I get too cute, spinning back fist Merab comes through or whatever, and I take it or whatever. But I think Stamann's boxing is decent. What he showed out in the Kelleher fight. I don't think many people will come out here and say that he was going to go do that to Kelleher and like 3x him on strikes. So I don't think Merab's the dumbest guy in the world. Well, maybe not the smartest guy in the world, but I think he's going to go out there and stick to his base, wrestle him, and grind out a decision.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it a bit. Like, we've talked about it here before. Grappling, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu, tends to be somewhat binary. It's very rare you see the better grappler get out-grappled. And it's like on the surface, Stammen may seem like a good matchup for Merab. But Merab is, in my opinion, much clearly the better wrestler. And I have a feeling it's just going to be kind of, at some point, whether it's 5 minutes in or 7 minutes in, it's going to be Merab doing Merab things however he wants to be honest. So we move on. We got... fun one here. Sean Strickland taking on Jocko. Luke, you want to start it off here?
Yeah, pretty strong opinion here. I think Strickland. I think he kind of has his way with Mr. Jocko. I mean, he's a guy that I think a lot of people projected to be much better than he was when he came into the UFC. Maybe not necessarily future world champion, but perennial top 15 type guy. When he's got those steps up, we've seen what happened with David Branch. Uriah Hall actually had a good first round against Uriah Hall, but once again, Uriah Hall doesn't do anything. So, there you go. Then dies. Brad Tavares didn't look great. Amandowski is honestly probably the only fight in recent years that he's looked good in. Barrio didn't look good. The fight against Anders, I thought was a very winnable fight for Eric Anders, but Eric Anders just didn't really have much of a sense of urgency in the fight at all. So, really over the last 5 years, outside of Amandowski, I don't think Jocko's really had, a solid performance in terms of the stylistics and how it plays out. I've always been a big fan of Sean Strickland in terms of his boxing. I think it's up there in terms of elite. He's not necessarily a big power puncher or a diverse guy in terms of he's going to kick a lot. He is pretty one-dimensional in what he does, but what I will say, he's very good in that dimension that he does. High output, very good jab, keeps good pace, keeps good pressure. Stands a little bit upright, largely relies on his chin to, defend strikes, which has always been a little concerning in regards to Strickland. But what I will say, he's eaten some clean shots. He's always been durable historically. So outside of Jocko, getting and landing some takedowns, getting extensive control time, which I don't see here. Strickland's takedown defense, I think, is 80%. I think he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Had some struggles early on against, Alex Garcia 4 or 5 years ago, where he got taken down 3 times, struggled a bit in the first round, still took over the fight, won the fight. I think he's got much better since then, moved up a weight class, which I don't think he's undersized in at all. So outside of, that limited, potential wrestling path for Jocko maybe clipping him, I just don't see it because the pace between the two is different. The acumen between the two is different. Strickland's, not the biggest power guy in the world, but I kind of compare him to some extent to a Diaz brother, not directly, but he's more of your attritional type guy who's going to just, come forward, put it on you. Even the shot he put Brendan Allen out, it wasn't big overhand right, big uppercut or anything like that. It's just pressure, boxing, boom, clip, timing, speed, accuracy, all about Sean Strickland. So I just struggle to see how Mr. Krzysztof Jocko wins minutes here.
Lags, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I mean, I think Strickland clearly has the volume edge, the power edge. I think the technical striking edge in general. And you touched on the wrestling too, but I don't even think Jocko could use the wrestling at all. The last guy to successfully take down Strickland was Usman, and he only took him down twice on 8 attempts. So I don't think Jocko has the wrestling game to stifle it. I have Strickland parlayed up with the fight goes this in the Merab fight for 2 units.
Yeah. I don't have a bet here. I largely agree with most of what Luke said. I guess my only real concern when it comes to Jocko is he has had a habit out of his career of, he's a bit of a weasel, to be honest, of making fights, close and suppressing.
I would say it's, sorry, real quick though, it's much lower competition though. I know we got on Eric Anders too, so I'm a little biased in that, but
I don't disagree. What I'm saying is, though, he has a tendency to make things clinchy and gross. And it's I favor Strickland in that clinchy and gross fight. I mean, the guy held his own for long stretch or some stretches with Usman, back in the day.
Yeah.
It's just more of I don't really want to trust the judges if we get some kind of a fight where it's Jocko gets 7 minutes of control. All that is to say is that's kind of the devil's advocate case here. I largely agree with Luke. I said it to you guys in the group chat, but I kind of think Strickland's upside is somewhere in the top 10 at 185. There are matchups that I think he'd be a very clear dog in that he probably can't win. But there are matchups I do think in the top 10 that he can win. He's got really excellent boxing. He's a very good defensive grappler. He's got great output. Those are the kind of things you really look for. Plus, he's fun as fuck. So hopefully, he goes and dumpsters him here. If you don't like Sean Strickland, get the fuck out of here.
And I was saying too, and a lot of people are, calling for a Holland fight for Sean Strickland. I think that'd be great.
That's a fun fight
with Holland side too. So
to be honest, that'd be a fun fight. But yeah, I think Strickland's gonna win. I think, look, I've been staying away from parlays lately because I've gotten crushed on so many of them. But I actually do think, if you were looking to parlay, I do think like Strickland Merab is a relatively safe one, to be completely honest.
And that's why, like, not to play devil's advocate on that play too. It's like that's why I'm playing the fight to go the distance of the Merab fight, just because in case, like Lou touched on, could we get an optics based, maybe Stamen ekes a decision, maybe. But I would say more often than not, it's Merab.
Yeah, agreed. And we move on to another one that should be fun. Jan Kutalaba, the Hulk, coming back after getting iced by Magomed Ankalaev, taking on Dustin Jacoby. Lags, what do you think here?
Not only mentioned iced by Magomed, but wasted few years, just setting that matchup up. But this is a weird one, to be honest with you. I like Jan. Like, I think he's the better striker here. I would favor him on power and durability, but like, he's got about 7.5 minutes of gas. But like, Jacoby doesn't really push a pace, so like, could he last a little bit longer? Like, I mean, and obviously, like, people were talking about the wrestling edge for Jan here. Do I trust him to wrestle here? Maybe. So I don't know. It's tough for me, but I don't mind Jan here. But -140 is just not great, to be honest.
Yeah, I had like kind of planned to bet Jan when we first saw this line come out. And to be honest, if he had gone to dog, I would have bet him. I do think his kind of like, physical bring it at you nature could be problematic for Jacoby. I think he's just a lot more physical. I do think he hits harder. I think he's as good, maybe the better athlete than Jacoby is. And, the truth is, if he uses it, he obviously has pretty substantial wrestling upside. He's a pretty good wrestler. We saw him use it against Khalil. I guess the concern for me and the reason I'm not really willing to lay it as a favorite is like, if you actually look at the Ankalaev fight, now look, obviously it's Ankalaev and you don't want to compare it too much to Jacoby, but you did see, he had a really bad tendency in that fight of following Ankalaev around instead of actually ever cutting off the cage. I actually thought he did something standing against Ankalaev that looked improved. The problem is, we saw it against Grishin. Jacoby, if you follow him, he has the tools to just jab you and kick you for 15 minutes. Like, that's that. And that's kind of the problem for me. It's like, if I can't cut him off and he doesn't wrestle, which is, I hope he does, but I don't think it's a lock. Right. I can pretty easily see, even if he doesn't gas, Jacoby just kind of outpointing him on the outside. He does have the tools to do that. We literally just saw him do it a fight ago when Grishin started to slow down. And so it's like, while I think the physicality, the athleticism, the power are all things that could give Jacoby issues, Jacoby is clearly the better technical striker. And he will not willingly engage in a brawl. And if Jan doesn't do a better job of cutting off the cage, I think it's going to be pretty problematic. And I think you're looking at a pretty dicey, close fight. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, so I put Jan -150 here. He was kind of around that pick'em range for a while. And honestly, based on like the movement, I kind of held off because I thought he might actually get to dog money at some point. And then he spiked. And now, he's kind of sitting -130, -140. So I'm not overtly in love with that. I think you guys pretty much hit the nail on the head and touched on a lot of the points. I do think Jan has the style to give Jacoby troubles. If he goes out there, brings that pressure base, even the striking and the wrestling, despite me actually thinking, Jacoby has shown good first level takedown defense. I do think Kutalaba is the best wrestler that he's fought. And what I will say, even pre-Ankalaev fights, I thought we did see, even in the 2.5 minutes that the Roundtree fight lasted, it did seem like there was a little bit more composure, a little bit more fight IQ from Kutalaba than he has historically. Not saying like fully, there was still some big aggro, overhand shots in there too, but it wasn't just as much, Hulk, rock'em sock'em robot type thing. Like he seemed like he was a little bit more processed in what he was doing. So, but But you touched on that. That's kind of the big thing, and why I'm always very hesitant to back guys, that have had cardio issues in the past, because you touched on it too, like 7.5 minutes of gas. If he goes full aggro, doesn't finish him, all right, well, how does he look in the latter 7.5 minutes? And Jacoby is a guy, you touched on it too, John, who can play that stick and move type game, if he doesn't put him out. So that's what makes me, a little offsetting in terms of Cutelaba. But once again, if, pick him plus money, I probably would have played him small, because I do think he has the type of game to give Jacoby significant troubles. We even did see against Christian, he did get hurt, early in the fight as well too. So I think it's kind of predicated on Cutelaba approach, which is what makes it interesting in terms of how you bet it. Does Cutelaba wrestle? Does he just go full aggro? Do we get, a more composed, mid-range Cutelaba trying to conserve gas? So there are some questions on it. I'm going with Cutelaba, but at current price, nothing for me.
Yeah, fair. So we move on to the co-main, and we got the first of 2 campfire events that you're going to have tonight. So gather around, boys and girls. Let's talk about our friend Giga Chikadze here. Someone who I have lost a lot of money. Well, not a lot of money, but I have lost money fading Giga Chikadze. I backed Jamal Emmers against him. I backed Omar Morales against him. And largely my opinion hasn't changed that much. People talk about Chikadze like he is this all-world elite striker. And for my money, the facts just don't really back it up when you look at it, whether it's based on his metrics, whether you look at the tape, whether you look at the guys who he's beaten. The bottom line is Jamal Emmers outstruck Giga Chikadze at range. The guy had a 50-50 fight with Brandon Davis that went to a split decision. Brandon Davis no longer in the UFC. Even the Irwin Rivera fight, he won that fight solidly, but, a little close for comfort from what you want from a minus 600 favorite in that fight. It's like the guy's getting talked about like he's Israel Adesanya, a guy who actually was an elite kickboxer. Giga was a Glory kickboxer, but he was 6-3 in Glory. Like, we're not talking about somebody who was like a multi-weight division champion here. The guy fought basically no one before the UFC. In the UFC, to be honest, the only like very good opponent he's fought is Emmers, and he probably lost that fight. And then like you look at it in his fight with Morales, and yeah, I bet Morales, and like I made a pretty crucial mistake in that fight, or in capping that fight, which is that when you look at Emmers isn't Morales, he's not a guy that really works his way into the pocket. He's really big single strikes to close distance, and that's it. But and those are the kind of guys Giga can really exploit, because he's a sharp counterpuncher, and he wants to throw one single strike and get out of there. Now, people are treating this like Cub Swanson is the same level. Omar Morales was minus 165 against Giga. Nobody said a word about it. Jamal Emmers was minus 150 against Giga. Nobody had much of an issue about it. And now we have Cub fucking Swanson, who is at plus money against Giga Chikadze. Like, what the fuck is going on? Cub Swanson has been a top 10 featherweight for like the better part of a decade. Go look at the guys who have beaten Cub Swanson. All of them are at a different level than Giga Chikadze is at. Like, this is crazy to me. And so, like, if you want to bring it out, it's like, oh, Giga's an elite kickboxer, and he's going to obviously be a better kickboxer than Cub. It's like, is he? Is he a better kickboxer than Cub? Like, this isn't a kickboxing match; it's an MMA match. And look, I'll start by saying this: like, I don't think people who are like, oh, Cub's going to go and out grapple him. I mean, could he? Maybe. I don't think that's really, a very logical way to look at this fight. Cub doesn't really hold people down. Giga actually seems to have reasonable get-ups. But Cub pushes a kind of pace that we have never seen Giga be able to keep. Even moderate tempo fights, he has slowed down every single time. Like I just touched on, Giga throws one shot and gets out. He doesn't throw combos. His defense is exceptionally poor in the pocket. And Cub, unlike Omar, first of all, Cub's always moving his head in his entries. Second of all, the guy always throws combinations to get into the pocket. I expect that to be the case here. And in the pocket, I think he's going to tee off on Giga. He's a much better pure boxer than Giga is. Like, I don't even think it's really debatable. And so the metrics back it up. The guy holds a higher pace. He has elite cardio to Giga, who has shit cardio. He's going to be the one going forward pretty much all fight. To me, the big questions about Cub Swanson are more, look, his leg looked like it buckled a bit against Pena when he was getting kicked, or Pinedo when he was getting kicked there. And that could happen here. It's a concern. No question about it. But also, like, if Cub's fighting the fight he should fight, he's not going to be sitting there getting his leg chewed up. And, like, you look at the guys Cub has fought, competitive fight with Shane fucking Burgos. Even the Moicano fight, he was outpacing Moicano a distance before he got hurt in that fight. There's no reason, there's no logical reason to think he is not going to be the guy winning minutes here. And, when people are like, oh, Cub's old. Yeah, he is old, and that's a concern. But he hasn't been chinny. He's only been knocked down once in the UFC, believe it or not. And so it's like, I don't really see a logical argument for Giga being a favorite. We have an established top 10 guy who has better metrics. His tape, in my opinion, is better, who's the much better boxer, and, whether he uses it or not, has grappling upside, and has way better cardio against the guy who's fought shit, who's coming in here and is a low-volume guy who's gassy, and yet he's the underdog. Like, what the fuck is going on? So I have 2.5 units on Cub plus 163. I think the line is completely absurd. We'll see if it happens. If Giga comes out here and outstrikes Cub and thoroughly outstrikes him over 3 rounds, I'm not going to fade him for a while because that'll be impressive, but I don't see it. Luke, how about you? Luke?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
All right, cool.
Yep.
Swanson, Chikadze? Yep. Yeah, so I'm kind of right there with you. I guess I'm not as bullish in the take on Swanson, but you kind of hit a lot of my points on the head. That my big thing in the fight, obviously, Chikadze, range kickboxer type guy. Swanson, despite being moderately hittable, his distance effectively. Really, the guys that have got in his face, if you watch legit the last 7 of what happened, it didn't look Giga. So we'll see. And you touched on, Cub, pretty much only losing to elite level guys, going strike for strike with a guy like Burgos. Didn't look bad against Moicano. I thought he won the first round against Ortega. So we'll see. But I like Cub.
Legs, how about you?
Yeah, see, I'm with Luke here again with the less bullish take here on Cub. I like Cub as well here. My big issue is the pace. Obviously, like you touched on, I think that Cub's could bring that type of pace that will slow Giga down, and obviously Cub will have a ton of success in the pocket. But to your point, also, I could see this fight playing out more at range if Giga is able to get off those kicks early to the body, to the leg, and slow Cub down in on the entries. But again, if Giga does slow down, which we've seen multiple times, Cub has solid cardio. Cub has the volume edge. So I might be with you there. I might be adding on a Cub play.
Get on the Cub train, Lags. Cub is cash.
Cub decision.
I might be adding a 1 unit play, but yeah, to your point as well, Luke. Cub decision, I think, is a solid play at plus 250.
All right. So we move on to another one. I'm not going to start with this one, but I will close it with a fucking bang. Luke, we got Dominic the Devastator.
Come on, John. No.
I'm not going to hog all the space. Space. We got the Devastator coming up. 2 straight losses, fighting for the title, taking on Jiri Prochazka, the Prince of Memes, the killer of CB Dalloway. What do you got for me?
No, I know John has a lot to unpack here, and we cannot steal the John Campfire segments on this podcast because that is the bee's knees of this podcast. So I'm just going to touch on my small little points here. In the one main thing I will say is that, okay, guys, let's contextualize this for 2 seconds. Let's say, obviously Reyes, ascend, climbs the top, fights Jones for the title. Keep in mind, guys, that was at UFC 247, which was one of the worst judged cards in probably modern MMA. There was 4 or 5, fights on that card that people were like, what in God's name? Like, we've seen, usually there's at least 1 or 2 of them every week. We're like, what the fuck, guys? Chris Lee, what are you doing? Go drink a beer or something. But, this card, there was like 4 or 5 fucking fights.
The Lee Murphy fight. The KB Lee and Murphy, 30-27 Murphy.
Yeah, James Krause had Trevin Giles is back for 4 minutes. Whatever that, that ass clown's name is, fucking associated with the other dude. Who knows? Anyway, what I'm getting to is, okay, hypothetically, throw the stylistics out the window of this fight for 2 seconds. Let's say the judges score that fight for Reyes. In my opinion, Dominic Reyes won the fight. I scored the first 3 rounds for Reyes, the last 2 for Jones. But hypothetically, let's say the judges score that fight for Dominic Reyes. Same, all right, obviously Dominic Reyes champ now. Boom. Fights Jan, as he has the belt. Same exact scenario happens. Reyes doesn't look overtly great. Jan knocks him out in the second. Same scenario. He now fights Prochazka. Same trajectory here. What is that line? Is it's
300, 400?
Is like how you could say that line is any worse than like minus 150. Once again, throw the fight out the window. Throw Reyes Prochazka out the window for 2 seconds. I'm solely talking about public sentiment here. Solely talking about public sentiment. If Reyes has a check mark against John Jones, what is his line here against Yuri Prochazka? It's not any worse than minus 150. I will say that. I will.
Yeah.
There's no way. There is no, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I am saying it's, justified. But I'm just saying in general, from a public sentiment standpoint, there's no way you can really argue with that. So now fighting a guy who's an absolute meme, who's knocked out a bunch of bums. People talk about, Luke, he beat Victor Nemkov back in 2015. All right, well, did you actually go back and watch the fight? What happened? Homeboy wasn't looking too good for 7 or 8 minutes. That was also a 5-0 Victor Nemkov, a 22-year-old Victor Nemkov who died on the stool after 10 minutes because in, Ryzen, they got their 10-minute first rounds, died on the stool. But Victor Nemkov was essentially winning that round, died on the stool. Gets out-wrestled by Albertson, memes. Halsey out-wrestled, flops to his back. Halsey has no submission acumen. Memes. Fights, fucking CB Dalloway over the hill. Memes. Maldonado over the hill. Memes. Volkan Ozdemir. Very good guy. Lost the first round. Got hurt twice. Second round. Caught head kick. Meme. Full circle. Dominic Reyes. Lost to the 2 best 205-pound guys in the world. Much technically better. Has power. Has sneaky wrestling grappling upside in this fight. Might I add to that guy's plus 115 right now. I'm sorry. I said I was going to keep it short, but I don't fucking understand this shit. Dominic Reyes should be a favorite here. Let it fly, John.
Lags, what do you got?
I'll be a little short just so you can get your spiel out, John. But statistically, 29 of Jiri's 31 fights have ended inside the distance. And of those 29 that have ended inside the distance, 26 have ended in the first round. And this is a 5-round fight. So people playing the juice with Jiri, assuming that he has 5-round cardio. If we make it that far, that's kind of crazy to me. So to be honest, I have 1.5 units on the fight doesn't start round 4 at minus 180. I think that has a ton of value. And I also have 1 unit on Reyes at plus 108. I think Reyes is going to counter KO him. I think Jiri's pretty hittable on entry.
Yeah. So Dominic Reyes and Jiri Prochazka. So, if you guys recall, Luke touched on it a bit. Let's go back to Jiri fighting Volkan. Volkan was probably the MMA Twitter play of the week that week. Everybody was on him. I was on him too. Everybody kind of agreed that was the right line. Now, you watch that fight play out. Do either of you guys think the minus 160, minus 170 was wrong? Seeing what you saw in that fight?
To be honest, I know I wasn't on Volkan there, but the only reason I didn't play because it was minus 170. When it got minus 150, minus 145, I was somewhat tempted on that. Yeah, that seems justified.
Even in hindsight, we saw the first 5 minutes of that fight. We saw Volkan walk forward, hit Jiri literally whenever he wanted to. All you heard about is Jiri's 80-inch reach. I'm hearing the same thing this week. Jiri's got an 80-inch reach. His inch is 3 inches longer. Volkan literally walked through it with no problem. He hurt him twice in the first round, took the first round unanimously, no issue. To Luke's point, he got kicked in the head and hurt, and then KO'd. Yes, sure, Jiri hits hard. We all know this. But re-watching that fight, it's I think the line on Volkan was right. Minus 160 or so. He's probably not having that same scenario playing out more than 35% of the time, right? And he clearly wasn't going to win minutes that fight. That was pretty apparent right away. But we all forget about that. And then Luke touched on it. You have Reyes, if he wins the Jones fight, what is he here? In his last fight against Jan Blachowicz, the guy who just beat Israel fucking Adesanya, Reyes closed minus 300. Now, we talked about it on here how that might be wide, but nonetheless, people were hitting Reyes at minus 300 against Jan. and yet he's a dog here. And if you look at the fight with Jan, I think Reyes made some really bad fundamental mistakes in that fight, deciding to lead instead of kind of trying to play the slow game Jan was playing. But the reality is, I don't think there's much evidence from Reyes' career in the UFC to think that he is chinny. He ate a couple nukes from Volkan. He ate some nukes from OSP. He just, I think, got reckless, went forward and got clipped, coming in against Jan. That can happen. That happens when these big boys swing. But nonetheless, so those two fights happen, and now we have Reyes sitting here as an underdog against Jiri Prochazka. Now, like I just said, Dominic Reyes carved through OSP. He carved through Jared Cannonier. I don't care what people say. Go watch the Volkan fight with the sound off. I'm not saying he carved through him, but Reyes clearly won the fight, in my opinion. I was kind of shocked it was a split live, but if you listen to the commentary, it's a little less surprising after the fact that everybody thought it was a robbery.
And real quick, John, I mean, he broke his nose like halfway through the fight.
The first round.
The first. But if he didn't break his nose, I mean, Reyes would have probably ran through him. But that's why he slowed down, in my opinion.
Right. And we saw, Reyes basically counter Volkan's face-off without much issue. Whereas we saw, and I don't want to compare 1-to-1, but we saw Volkan basically do whatever he wanted to Jiri standing. And so we've seen Reyes that to everybody. It's not like the guy hasn't fought good competition. He has mostly dominated it. He lost to Jones. I think it's a close fight. I think it could have gone either way. But the reality is not a single person had outlanded Jones on distance in his career. Reyes did. Reyes is the only fighter, I believe, to land more than 70 significant strikes against Jones. He landed 100. This is fucking crazy. And then I hear people talking about Jiri's an elite boxer. Yeah, he's got a nice jab. I'm not going to lie. He's got some nice technical offensive things, but boxing's not a one-way street. If it was who the best offensive boxer in the UFC is to be champion, Michael Johnson would have a very different career, right? that's just saying, are you fucking kidding me here? This is a joke. And then you go back, look at the guys he's beating. CB Holloway, Fabio Maldonado. He basically was losing to Volkan. What is happening here? And now it's he's a lock to knock Reyes out. He throws too much. Reyes is going to have heaters coming at him. And it's sure. But Reyes he's fought guys who throw heat. This is not the first guy he's fought. And it's I don't care that he's a 3-inch reach advantage. Reyes is a much better understanding of distance than Jiri does. If Jiri comes forward chin down like that, he is going to get clipped. Whether he gets knocked out, I don't really know. But I can tell you this. Reyes is going to punch him in the face square a lot of times in this fight. That is going to happen over and over and over again. It's you want to tell me, it's if you're sitting here and you're telling me Jiri's the better striker than Reyes, I'm what the fuck are you watching? That's I don't mean to be offensive to people who think that, but seriously, what the fuck are you watching? Because I don't really, and again, I'm not saying Jiri can't win this fight. The guy hits very, very hard. He 100% can knock out Reyes. I'd even say it's as much of a 35% outcome. He could get in there and knock him out. I think that's fair. But I don't think there's any way he can win minutes in this fight. His legs are uber kickable. He has virtually no defense. His understanding of range is literally zero. And Luke touched on it a bit, but Jiri's a horrible grappler. Reyes, whatever you say about him, he hasn't grappled much in the UFC. But I remember when he fought Jeremy Kimball, and everybody's this is a dangerous fight for him. Kimball can wrestle, and Reyes instead grapple fucks the shit out of Kimball and finishes him on the mat. The guy won, I believe when he was a blue belt, won the IBJJF title for it. I can tell you this, Jiri, I don't know what belt he is. It doesn't really matter. He doesn't fight like a blue belt. If Reyes actually decides in this fight he wants to put Jiri on the mat and hold him down, he is going to. That's going to happen and can probably finish him there. I don't think he will do that, but that route's built in. And so, yeah, it's go look at Jiri's career. Seriously, go into the tape and look at Jiri's career when he's fought any kind of quality competition. All the wins that have come out of it. The Nemkov fight, he got what would have been the equivalent of 10-8'd by Nemkov in that 10-minute round. Nemkov was literally just dead and couldn't get off the stool. He literally has gotten – the guy basically just pulls himself out of the jaws of defeat a million times. You know who else did this? Another man who worked himself up to a title shot. Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith did that. And for a while, people talked about Anthony Smith like he's elite. This is MMA. This is MMA betting. This is why there will always be an edge, because there are people actually putting money down on Jiri fucking Prochazka as a favorite against Dominic Reyes. I don't care if you think Reyes was a little overrated and maybe didn't deserve the line against Jan and lost to Jones. This is crazy. This is crazy stuff. Reyes is a clear, whatever you think about him, whether you don't think highly of him or you think he's elite, he's a clear top 5 fighter at light heavyweight. Saying otherwise is just ludicrous, to be completely honest. Against Jiri, a guy who's had one fight in the UFC, got dominated for the vast majority of that fight and pulled it out of the fire with a head kick. The line's crazy. I think Reyes should be 60-65% at a minimum. Like I said, I'm hesitant to go beyond that just because the power threat is there. Look, if Jiri comes out and lands a wild shot and KOs Reyes, I don't think any of us will be surprised. But, this is the classic spot to make money off of when you're betting MMA. The guy who's been fighting elite competition, who loses to a couple elite guys in a row against a hot, sexy prospect who's now getting way too much credit. You could bet these spots blind and you will make money. Like, I'm just telling you. And by the way, when you factor in the tape and the metrics and everything else, they all favor Reyes as well. So like, this is a fucking no-brainer. I don't care if I look like a fucking moron come Saturday night. I'm comfortable looking like a moron like this. Because you know what? More often than not, I'm going to make money on this spot, and the Club and Sub podcast is going to make money on this spot, like we've done for the last year. But anyway, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. It got a little hot in here. We're going to cool it down now. We got maybe we'll do a live stream soon. Actually, you know what? I have a fun contest for you guys. If Reyes knocks out Jiri in the first round, I'll send it to Lags will send a tweet from the account about it. To anybody who likes, retweets, and follows, I'll give $150 to anybody that does that if Reyes knocks Jiri out in the first round.
And not to mention, I also made a promise in the Discord chat that we are in. If Jiri does win a clear, no BS decision on Saturday, I will do a shoey next live stream.
There you go. So if Jiri wins a decision, Lags is shoeing on live stream. If Reyes knocks him out in the first round, I'm giving someone $150.
All right. Well, I guess while we're all on the band, if Reyes subs Jiri, I will give someone $200.
There we go. Lags, you better write this down. You better.
I will write all of this stuff.
Club and Sub giveaways coming for everybody here. We're men of the people, guys. That's why we love doing this. So, yeah, we're going to be back next week. Maybe we'll get a live stream going soon. We just got to figure out how to sync up our stream so we don't have one of us screaming in the background while the other two have no idea what's going on.
But we have bets on the fight.
Yeah.
But, yeah, guys, thanks for coming out. Please, if you like the show, drop a like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Like, it means a lot to us. We're going to keep doing it whether or not you do, but we'd appreciate it. And yeah, as usual, I'm John at MMA Fox, Luke at SW_betting, and Lags at Lags_the Capper. We'll see you guys next week. Take it easy.